Okay, here we go again with something totally revolutionary. You won't hear this anywhere else. It's from Supernoetics, and it's one of the core properties of punk psychology and something that you really need to know about to be able to understand people, understand their emotions, and understand them fully. We call it the scale of emotional and social health. Emotional health, well, how should a person be? You know, have you thought, what are the ideal feelings? I mean, happy is a good one, but is there anything above happiness? Well, you bet there is. But it's also about social health, because how people feel, their attitudes and moods affects how they interrelate with other people. Somebody who is grumpy or angry and irritable is not nice to be around. Listen, somebody who's mopey and weepy and forever crying and depressed and feeling sad, they're not nice to be around either. Some people are just boring. There's a whole scale of values which I'm going to go through. Now, in fact, it's a version of a much bigger property I developed for Supernoetics. This is the sort of mother knowledge system that contains punk psychology, but is bigger than punk psychology, because it has a lot of learning, education, and teaching, you know, of this kind. And the bigger thing I call my emotional ladder. Now, who doesn't know that anger is a slightly more upbeat emotion than fear? Or fear is an even more upbeat emotion than despair and gloom and despondency. Boredom, of course, trumps the lot. But then above boredom, you've got nicely positive feelings, you know, being interested, engaged, excited, where a person's happy and you get delight, and as it develops, even exhilaration. Have you ever had that feeling, you know, the adrenaline rush, you know, racing down the slopes if you ski? Listen, I don't ski, but I've got my versions of adrenaline rush and things that make me feel really excited and upbeat. But seriously, what lies beyond that? Well, one thing that lies up there is, well, a bit further up than exhilaration, is the flow. This is Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept. He wrote a whole book about it, that you can get so empowered and engaged and sunk so deeply into what you're doing, the whole world kind of vanishes and you're just left with this kind of way of approaching things that's called in the flow. Above that, we start to get exciting mental and spiritual powers. You know, things come on like telepathy, telekinesis, ESP, all those cool things. But have you ever thought what lies really at the top? What would be the highest emotions? Maybe words would come to you like bliss or ecstasy. You know, ecstasy is so intense, it's almost hard to bear inside your mind. It's like, whoa, it's a wonderful, thrilling feeling. Is there anything above that? Well, if you look into the history of, people who are on the spiritual path, those that have ascended and achieved enlightenment, you might find another level above there that would be a sort of serene radiance. And I use this word radiance advisedly, because when a person is very spiritual and serene, you can literally feel something flowing out from them. It is a radiance. They're radiating their serenity. Okay, anything above that? Well, yes, I think there is, and I call it limitless being. It means transcending everything to do with the material, physical universe, being completely out there in the spiritual dimension. There are no limits, you know. It's a phenomenon from the unlimited mind, or the non-material being, let's call it. Listen, non-material being, there's no matter, energy, space, or time. No time. Well, that means it's timeless. That means it doesn't die or go away. You can't unbe, for example. But also space. Once you move into the idea of infinite space, it makes your head spin. So these very high emotions, they're something that we seek actively in Supernoetics. Punk psychology will bump into the very top of this ladder sometimes. It can't be undone. You know, when a person releases a significant chunk of something that's hurting them, boom, they tend to shoot straight up the ladder. Unfortunately, it doesn't last. So the pursuit in Supernoetics, which is a slightly different discipline, is learning how to manage and how to integrate and how to live in this higher dimension. And we've probably got more answers than anybody else. I'll put it this way. The only other kind of answer is to sit on a mountaintop for 30 or 40 years. We haven't got that long, have we? We want to get there sooner than that. Okay, so that's the emotional ladder. As I said, the scale of emotional and social health is a kind of simplified or boiled down version of that. And I want to share that with you now. We're going to start at the lowest values and then sort of work up. We'll see how we do. Okay, so here's an overall chart of my scale of emotional and social health. Well, I said mine, that's probably ill-advised. It's mine because I'm using it, but in fact it was developed by a good friend of mine called John Whale, who lives in the south of England. He's a pretty interesting character. He has researched and developed and published a lot about a model that we call the human assemblage point. That's something I may share later on in the Punk Psychology Academy. We'll see. I've got some videos on that anyway. Okay, so here we go. This is the scale of emotional and social health. At the bottom is negative -5, and this is various descriptions like despair and despondency, distress, apathy, misery, dissolution. It's not good. This is where the person is literally falling apart. They're becoming in so much pain they start to get numb and can't feel anything anymore. This is about the lowest level of emotional and social health. Obviously not good for the person, but not good to be around either. In this state, the person's emotions are kind of turned off. They're numb, or they're chemically attenuated, meaning this person is doped up on antidepressants, or they're taking drugs, or they're drinking alcohol and boozing themselves silly. It's basically an antisocial level in that sense. Okay, so a lot of the people down at this level, they're in deep doo-doo in life. These are the drug addicts, the alcoholics, the compulsive gamblers, suicidal psychotics. They are crooks and, lawbreakers, failures, bankrupts, people who are socially dependent. They're often institutional inmates. They're locked up, as they say, for their own good. This person's life is nothing to envy. This person's life is rather desperate. Insofar as they're in the economic system, and most of them are making no impact whatsoever, they can just spend money and run up debts. They're irresponsible. They can't even look after property. If they have a house or home, they don't care for it, so it loses value. These are people who are trouble to those around them. Unfortunately, they feel helpless. They don't feel they can help themselves, so they slowly self-destruct. But the trouble is, they bring down everyone around them. They rely on handouts and charity rather than understanding that if you want something, or want some pay, you have to give, you have to exchange. So you have to give something in order to get reward. And they don't seem to understand that. And they're not very good learners, so they go doing the same old things over and over. They just don't seem to get anything out of life, basically. Okay, what's above that? And the next level up, negative -4, in other words. This is people who are suffering anxiety, grief, fear, the very unpleasant lower emotions. They're often in deep fear, which of course we recognize as anxiety. Everything troubles them and scares them. These kind of individuals and groups, they smother creativity and enthusiasm of all kinds. They use pseudo-kindness, meaning they're trying to get involved in people's lives, but they're muddling things up worse than ever. They have this kind of phony sympathy and phony generosity. They can't do anything in life. They can't create anything for themselves, but they're always pushing their nose into other people's business. And frankly, they don't do it any good. They don't achieve what they set out to do. So they're very quickly going to lapse into negative -5, in fact. But at this level, we're talking here, losers and sick people, down and outs. And this kind of person is likely to attach to them. So this is your classic counselor, therapist, counselor, the person whose life is a disaster. They're going around claiming it's abuse and everybody's bad to them and isn't life awful. Oh, I know, I'll be a counselor so I can help other people. My God, some of these folks can't even help themselves. What's the use of that? They're often self-righteous, of course, although they're pretty disastrous as, failures, their life's falling apart around them. That doesn't stop them criticizing others and pointing out what's wrong, and you shouldn't do this, and that's wrong. So, again, they're not comfortable to be with for this level. They have this overwhelming fear of, supposedly anyway, of hurting people, and yet they do it almost routinely. And yet they always miss their cues when there's a real opportunity to help, when it's worthwhile. They're suddenly not there, they're not available. This sort of person they're justifying themselves, it's all somebody else's fault. Life did this to them, and they're sort of waiting for someone to do it for them, someone to step in and do them favors. They have to be helped, and they don't really seem to understand the idea of self-worth and dignity. Now, children get treated in this way too. So children are educated into this negative -4. They grow up believing this is what life's like. So these are kids wanting continuous sympathetic attention. They're crying and sniveling, screaming and fighting and throwing tantrums if they don't get what they want. Yeah, I want, yeah. You know the kind of kid, they're very tiresome to be around. They show up in a coffee bar when you're having a coffee. They can be extremely unpleasant. This is the level of sentimentality and grief and pain where a person is seeped in their own misery and their past, and they don't really want to climb out of it because for them it's a solution. Now, don't forget, it's an important teaching of mine that all problems are basically solutions. Alcoholism is the problem. No, it's not. Alcoholism is the solution. Something else is the problem. And the same with poverty. Poverty, I can't earn any money, I'm always broke, is a problem. No, it's the solution to some problem that the person really has, like they're incompetent, incapable, or so withdrawn they can't reach out to other people and so on. And so these kind of people, they worry themselves to pieces. They're always worrying about health and, all these diseases, and they're kind of candidates for vaccination. Any little scare, oh my God, they'll rush off to the ER or anything like that. Crime and disaster, listen, they're not only frightened of it, but they seem somehow to attract it. These sort of paranoid suspicions. It's an old rule, what you resist, you get. That's a fundamental rule in Supernoetics, by the way. As I say, it's all somebody else's fault. Everything's painful. Life is terribly miserable. So this kind of person not doing well, that's why it's a negative -4. A little bit more lively than the one below. But look, next one, up. And I use the word up advisedly because this lot are really bad news. But they are actually slightly more dynamic, more alive in a vicious way than the people below them. Most of the people, by the way, below them are pushed down there by this next level I'm going to talk about. Negative -3 people. These are the coverts, the sneaky, sly people. They're hostile. They're going to bring you down. There's hidden malevolence there, but they're very good at not showing it. This is probably one of the most populated social levels, emotional and social levels, on this whole scale of health, as I'll share with you. So people below them don't really understand where they're coming from. These people always have a chronic sort of smirky, smiley, butter wouldn't, what shall I say? Well, I've heard it said, cyanide wouldn't melt in my mouth kind of mentality. Those people who are gooey, but there's something wrong, it just doesn't seem genuine. They're not really happy and smiley. As I say, these are sneaky people, so this is a disguise. Oh, I think that's wonderful. All the time, they're going to go, I'll get this swine. Their covert agenda is very different to what they put up on the outside. Okay, that's the key to these people. They appear calm, pleasant, and resourceful. They seem to be sympathetically or morally concerned. They're politely asking you questions. Are you sure you're right? How's your marriage going? Are you really getting on with your wife these days? What's she been saying to you? They're actually kind of pulling information from you that they can use to fire back at you. They want to know personal questions. So anyone that's like this is always asking. You've got to be wary of them. Asking about your work and about your relationships, about your sex life or your politics or your religion. Because trust me, this person only wants the information, not because they're concerned or interested, but because they can use it against you. They have this invisible anger intent on hurting people, and yet they're terrified of people in anger. If you go like a lion, you know, in front of these people, you roar and go, "Ah, you damn swine, get out of my..." They're ever so frightened and will crawl off like sort of reptiles. They really are afraid of anger, but they've got their own malevolent anger fermenting inside. You should read the document for more details on this, but it's a very uncomfortable level. Trust me, these are not nice people. The thing is, they're often hard to spot because of this pretense, this facade of friendly helpfulness. And remember, they're really sneaky and sly, basically. The fact is, they're very, very dangerous. They're cruel, they're cowardly, but manipulative. So they engage in gossip, and they have no qualms about adding to the gossip, you know, twisting it, making it work. Making it worse, so that it really like stabs the person in the back. So they'll embellish bad news and make it more bad. But if you confront them and say, "Well, that's not true, I heard very differently," oh, they'll back away and change the topic. "Oh, well, you know, I of course I did say that, you know, his first marriage was, you know, blah, blah, blah." They try and change the subject as quickly as they can and get away with it. There's nothing that the people at this level won't do to try and avoid exposure. They through their appearance and their words and their propaganda, they're presenting themselves as being so nice and so charming and so condescending, so helpful, but they're not. Now, for people, some of those that they're either too lazy, which is common, or too fearful because it requires a bit of guts to do it for themselves, they will manipulate and subjugate others to do it for them. Have you heard that saying, you know, that one person is making the bullets, but they get somebody else to fire them? That's what we're sort of saying here. They will make malicious bullets, but they'll get somebody else to shoot it into the person. So their targets are anything that's worthwhile, anything that's going good, basically. Any individual or family, any tribe, companies, nations even, that are higher than them on the scale, they see these as a threat. These are stronger people, so we have to bring them down. They want to bring them down to a chronic appeasement and grief and apathy and despair. In other words, the -4, -5 below them. They have very little use for children unless they can use them in some sneaky way to manipulate others, so they don't really care. Think of the fawning politician that wants to stroke the baby or kiss the baby. That same kind of phony, fake interest in children, it's not really true. What they're trying to do, these people, their unstated aim is to cause ruin, discredit the achievements of good people, and to split up relationships. And at this, they can be very, very successful. They will be gloating when things crash and people quarrel with each other and former friends and lovers finally fall out with each other. They love this. Basically, you should never trust anyone at -3, negative -3, with your health, don't trust them with your money, your reputation, your safety, your husband or your wife, your spouse, in other words, your children, your business, your company, your country. I don't even trust them with this planet. They're utterly, despicably destructive and unreliable while being very greased and smooth on the surface. Okay, enough of that creepy level. Unfortunately, it's very common, as I say, and the news media are riddled with it. Just above that, at negative -2, we have people who are not happy, but they're standing up for themselves. So these are people who are angry and aggressive, delinquents and insurgents. You know, they push against the envelope. They don't tolerate being disciplined and controlled. They want to, attack everything, lash out. Individuals like this, if they're stuck at this chronic level, they're consumed basically with animosity towards other people and other groups, and they're sort of now the negative -3, they had sneaky hidden anger. They suppressed it because they were frightened of being discovered. At this level, they've got no problem letting people know that they're angry, that they're pissed off about things. And in fact, that's what they do so well. So they lash out at people. They don't really express kindness and consideration for others. They're often blatantly dishonest and disloyal because they don't care. You know, why should I do what's right? Why should I care about you? Damn it, life's been a bitch to me. I'm going to get my own back. You know, that kind of thing. This is why I've called it a scale of emotional and social health. You will see that people's behaviors, wrapped up in this scale, is people's behaviors being driven by emotions. And it's very important that you spot what a person is doing on this scale of emotional health. Very important. Okay, now negative -1 people. These are, again, are still negative. These are people that are condemnatory, critical, you know, they're always bitching on about things, antagonistic. It can be amusing for a short while to meet Mr. Grumpy or Mrs. Grumpy, somebody curmudgeonly. Have you heard that word? You know, no, I don't like anything, dang it, nothing. And I don't know what this is, but I'm against it anyway kind of people. They want to dominate activities because they want to smash things up in the open sense, you know, not sneaky and destructive. They're often saying, I don't like, you know, these kind of people, I'm against them, so I'm going to fight them. And they can be very, combative, I think is probably the best word. But it's not always just combative. They can be resentful and mocking, sniggering, laughing at people. They want to find and stir up trouble and then engage with it. They're not trying to do it in a sneaky way like the -3 people. These are provocateurs, if you like. They're very insensitive, of course, and therefore undiplomatic, very unsporting. They don't want to play the game fairly, and they like to argue and dispute everything, and they get a big whoopee out of reducing others to anger or lower, you know, make somebody burst into tears. See, you know, they can, if they can make somebody burst into tears, they'll go, see, you know, I win. Yeah. That sort of mentality, I'm trying to dramatize it or demonstrate. I think you know what I mean anyway, that kind of thing, okay? These people never listen much, they continually interrupt and they're not interested in other people's viewpoints, so they often just won't let them speak it. They will certainly, they're not fully honest either, they will certainly twist facts, especially to defend themselves, and especially to undo somebody else. They will always take a sort of negative version of what was said and use that to broadcast, to hurt somebody else's reputation. Yuck! Oh, yuck, okay, so now we come to the sort of partition line, the middle, the sort of neutral area, where a person is indifferent, they're bored, they're ambivalent. Ambivalent means, you know, go either way. I like it, I don't like it, so what? Often lethargic and rather passive. They're not doing much, they're not making much impact on things, because they're not being much impacted by it themselves, so they're not really interacting. All I can say is that they're not as destructive as the other crowd, but they're certainly not interesting or nice people to be with in that sense. Okay, let's take a look at some of their characteristics. They're observers, spectators. They don't get engaged, as I said. Mildly pleasant, perhaps. They seem inoffensive or purposeless. They're not really concerned about any issues, so you're not likely to get into a violent argument with these people. Everything for them is just too much trouble. With poor concentration, no ambition, they never really achieve much in life. Certainly would never achieve anything outstanding. So not having any purpose or being lazy and careless, neither content or discontented, they're not very helpful. In fact, they're never intimidating or antagonistic, but they're not much use either. They don't make good companions, let's put it that way. Like all of the lower and negative levels, they want more affluence, but they won't allow themselves to do much. They want to be supported, they want to get rich, they want to have success, they want to have wealth. But you mean work harder? I don't think so. So it's that kind of person, okay? Let's now shake off all the negative stuff that's clinging to us. stuff on our boots, let's wipe them clean, the stuff you stepped in. And let's look at positive. Firstly, mildly positive, the positive +1 person. This is someone who's conservative and they're interested in preservation, moderation, discretion, caution, all of those kind of words. Yes, this could be good, let's not get too excited about it, but seems good. So this person is a conformist. They're not likely to start a radical group or, be part of a revolutionary program. They take the soft option, in other words. The safe option is just keep things as it is. It's the sort of coward's way out. But, what you're suggesting, I don't know, it's so radical, I think I'll just stand pat and I'll stay where I am. That kind of person, they're not so tolerant of others, but they're not hostile and negative in the way the lower people are. They're not insisting there are laws made to sort of hold these people back. So, as I say, somewhat positive, not horrible to be with, but nevertheless, there are issues with this kind of person. Let's go up a notch. Positive +2. This is nice. These are people who are enthusiastic, they're appreciative, they're eager, and they will recognize what you do, and when they get involved with something, they commit, they're devoted to it. Commitment is a word I've missed off the scale here. Perhaps we should put it in. They're genuinely helpful and constructive, active people. They do so from a sense of purpose and conviction. They have their own quiet sense of well-being and look forward to the day. They're not trying to run away from it. They're active and engaged. They're busy. They're hard-working people. They're friendly. They're positive. They're interested in you. How you're doing, and they mean it. They are interested. They're not really sort of leadership potential, because typically they're not wanting to take sides. They're more like people who would, push behind a leader they believed in. They would give some impetus to that leader. They would accept more responsibility if they really understood the bigger picture. But they're active people, but more likely to inspire others to action than try and do it for themselves. They have a good standard of living. They're not, their home environment, their personal world, their ecosystem, if you like, isn't collapsing and rotting like on the lower part of the scale. So as I say, not bad to be with. Now let's look at +3. Here it's getting exciting. This is a person who's very positive about things. They're experiencing exhilaration, rapture, excitement, vitality, ambition. Yes, that kind of person, that kind of yes person, not just yes. They're often charismatic in personality. They attract people without any effort. They're loved by almost everyone. They can maintain a strong and sustained interest in their subject. These are great people to marry. And listen, if a girl conceives a passion or an attraction to you, she's going to be with you through thick and thin, and she'll look after you and defend you again. And vice versa, of course. If you, a woman, you can find a man that's made a commitment. These are the ideal sort of marriage partners, really. They're preoccupied almost with things like involvement and creativity. They don't start things and give in easily as people lower on this scale do. They're not grasping and greedy, but they're not afraid of possessions. So, if there's money in the family, company's going well, or somebody dies and they inherit, they're not scared of it. They don't go and squander it and blow it on stupid things. They won't gamble it away. They'll just enhance their lifestyle with, better housing, better cars, without being, reckless and squandering money and so on. These are the people who won't tolerate gossip and defamation of people. They say, I don't want to hear this. If that's the best you can say about them, then please shut up. That kind of person. So they don't like generalizations and insinuations and assumptions. Everybody knows he's a womanizer. A person like this is likely to say, well, I don't know that he's a womanizer. How many people do you know? Only 2? All right, well, that's hardly everybody knows he's a womanizer, is it? They want honesty. They want, specific facts. And if the facts and the truth aren't forthcoming, then this person is likely to shut up. Look, I've had enough of this kind of talk. Now, please go away and don't call me. I'll call you if I want you. So that's an important and valuable kind of friend or spouse to have, as you'll see. They can be part of big plans that thrust towards a better future, and they're not scared. They will get involved in things that are ambitious, so they're good project members. And for them, making a lot of money is easy. They're not scared, getting good possessions and a good lifestyle. They have abundance, in other words. They can create abundance. They can be part of abundance. Okay, well, in keeping with the lower part of scale, we've got a +4 and a +5. What would a positive +4 look like? Well, this is a person who has personal power, great charisma, can be in harmony with people, they're triumphant because they're successful, they know what abundance is, they can create it, they can integrate, organize and make things coherent. These people have a high sense of personal worth, a great integrity, and they believe and respect the rights of others. They've got honesty, affection, ethicality, trustworthy people, diplomatic, they're confidential and discreet, they won't yak behind your back, discriminating, communicative. These are some of the positive traits of people at this level. And they don't interfere with other people's lives or try to damage them or other people's businesses or personal affairs. They're more concerned about the environment and society as a whole and the big issues for mankind, like green issues, instead of trying to, doing this damn neighbor who's got a dog that's always barking. They're interested in much, much broader issues than that. They love children and get on with children. Children to them are of high worth because children are the future, and they allow children the freedom to express themselves and actually help the child find mental and physical well-being. They're very important, capable members. They're pretty uncommon, of course, and even more so this last step, the people who are at positive +5. These, we are looking here at sublime radiance, that wonderful, like we're close to bliss and ecstasy. These are powerful spiritual states where it's hard to sustain, but there are people who can radiate calm and composure and beauty. They're tolerant. They have puissance, they are power. That's a posh French word for power, dominion, if you like. Now, it doesn't mean the same as domination. It means everything in their life is under their control. If something flies out of control, they're very quickly able to correct the problem and keep things going on the level that they should be. So people like this are at the highest emotional level, the highest social health level. They're the best behaved, best to be with, the most creative, positive, ideal companions to travel through life with. These are people who are true heroes, champions of all kinds, not just champions of the poor and needy. Individuals at this level, quite frankly, are rare. They're priceless. They can tolerate new ideas and change their viewpoint if need be, if they see something better. They're very intuitive and spontaneous and often light-hearted and humorous. That's an important trait. If you can laugh at things, you're in a very positive psychological state. These people know their own abilities. They know what they're worth. They know they're valuable for society, and they have no shame or blame or hold back in stepping up to the plate and saying, I have some answers for this. So in that sense, they're very positive people too. And most importantly, this is one of the most important healthy emotional and social traits you can have. They don't give a damn what other people think about them. They know in themselves that what they're doing is right, is creative, is having a positive effect, and that's worth a lot to them. So they're not influenced by other people trying to bring them down. They can follow instructions. They give instructions, of course. They're great leaders, but they can also follow instructions. But they will not, in any circumstance, compromise their ethics, their beliefs. If they're forced to do something or someone tries to make them do something that's not right for them, they will fight and contest it. These are people who will fight to the death if they have to uphold and keep pure their own standards of proper behavior. If they decide they want to do something, it will happen, and people trying to stop them would do so at their own peril. Because people at +5s, they have tremendous personal power. I've called this puissance, right? As I say, a lovely French word. They can find solutions to the world's problems. They can make it work. They're not nasty. They don't hold grudges. They stay on good terms with almost everybody by basically their magnanimous, their generous, light-hearted and forgiving nature. They excel really at things without, they don't have the need to control or dominate people or show they're better. Look, I'm brilliant, compared to me, what are you worth? You know, you're a bunch of rubbish. They don't have these kinds of attitudes. And so their enthusiasm and confidence will inspire others to reach higher levels and do things for themselves. So that they make great leaders and gurus and teachers and so on. It's really interesting. All right, well, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? And I could say more. I mean, we could subdivide some of these levels and give them unique characteristics. For example, I've identified a few emotions, like sort of toxic emotions and moods and feelings that I call the self-deprecating emotions, meaning, you know, you hurt yourself with this view of yourself. Things like shame and guilt and regret. Unworthiness and so on, but you can learn about those elsewhere. I don't think it's important to the general structure of this scale. And right near the top there's another level I could mention. I've used it in my writings. I call it the white fire of being. It's a sort of passionate, intense, energetic, almost a fury of living, and it's a cold white fire. It's connected with the radiance of being and the excitement and passion of love and outflow and communication and so on. And I'm sure this is a lot to do with the idea of halos, be it around spiritual people. I don't think you have to be a saint or a very spiritual person. Well, yes, spiritual, of course, but I mean, you don't have to follow anybody else's religious codes to be at this level. You just have to feel it, and life at that level is so exciting and passionate. Whenever I've been up there, I love it. And as I said, I think it's given rise to the idea of halos. You can see this energetic white light around people at times when they hit on this level and score at it. Okay, a couple of things not said. One of the most important is that people do move around on this scale. Nobody's absolutely nailed to one place, but we have what we call an emotional set point, and that is the person tends to gravitate to that same place. And of course, in terms of social behaviors and the things I've been talking about, these very rapidly become habits, and therefore the person is stuck in their ways, so they're generally not that difficult to identify. The other very important point, of course, is that we can raise this. This is the whole point. Supernoetics has thousands of techniques, hacks and things, but punk psychology, simple though it is, it's extremely powerful at clearing up, really getting rid of a person's obsessions with the past, if you like, where they're stuck and all their attention units are, bringing them back into the present. The person is then able to get their attention off past miseries, past habits, past behaviors, unworkable behaviors, and the person will change in the present and the now. So, pretty important stuff, I think you'll agree. Now, what I'd like you to do to reinforce this for yourself, just do a little exercise for me. This is really interesting. Pick about 10 or 12 people from real life, if you can line up that many people that you can identify their social tone or level with. If not, you can turn to fictional characters, film characters if you want. You know, if you need to do that, whatever, just list them out and then work out where they are on this scale of emotional and social health. And I'll give you a kickstart here. For example, if you're readers of Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings, you'll know a character called Grima Wormtongue, who was the advisor to King Theoden. And Wormtongue was one of these creepy, weaselly -3s. You know, I'm just acting in your best interest, your majesty, my lord. But this guy was a treacherous person who was betraying the king to his enemies, but a real slime ball, you know, cyanide wouldn't melt in my mouth type of person. It's a really well portrayed character. I suppose another one would, from Shakespeare's Othello, there's a character in there called Iago, who's extremely evil and manipulative and trying to bring about destruction of the king and his kingdom. Othello, well, let's put it this way. Iago eventually manages to persuade Othello that his wife, Desdemona, Othello's wife, Desdemona, has been unfaithful. She hasn't. But this twisted character, Iago, gets this idea going, and Othello eventually buys into it, and he strangles and kills Desdemona. But she didn't do anything. She was quite innocent. She loved her husband. That's the kind of evil, or the extent to which all this kind of evil stuff can go. It's sort of propagandizing, I guess, in a way. So they a couple of starter characters for you, but work out some characters for yourself that you can find either in fiction or in history, or people in your own life, and categorize them according to this scale. I think you'll find it very enlightening. There's one other thing you can do if you can find a buddy you will share, which is to act out and dramatize what a person would be like at each of these levels. You know, I've kept doing the creepy, slimy sort of -3. But, you know, what about someone who's radiantly happy, or somebody, I mean, I was doing it a few minutes ago, somebody who's in the flow and intense passion, exhilaration, excitement up at the top end of the scale. Wow. You know, if you dramatize each of these levels, you can see them, recognize them when they occur, and of course recognize them more when you feel them within yourself. And if you're not getting hits on any of the really good, exciting ones at the top, you need to work on this. You'll need some punk psychology. We can raise you up. We can even raise up the -3s. They're all trying to solve some crummy problem from the past. So punk psychology is really healing and compassionate, because we understand why people are doing what they're doing. More to the point, we can raise them up. Thanks very much for listening.